everybody, welcome to the Great Room.
Thanks for having me.
I just wanted to say hi to all my Facebook friends out there.
Are they ready for us?
Hey everybody, welcome to the Great Room. My guest this week is Jonathan Richman.
Hello everyone. Hello Andrew.
Hey, thanks for coming down. And I've been looking forward to this one with great anticipation. I'm a huge fan of your music and your body of work. And
Thank you.
And I've enjoyed our telephone conversations up till now. So here we are in the flesh.
Yeah, I'm excited too.
All right. Let's just start with a tune of yours.
Yes. Well, I was born by the Fenway in Beth Israel Hospital. Could that help to explain why I love the Fenway so well? Nowhere do I feel more at home, it seems, than on the Fenway where I've dreamed my dreams. When I was small, we'd go to old Mechanics Hall, and we got to see mighty Ted Williams hit one over the right field wall. Oh man, nostalgia comes out every day, it seems, on the Fenway where I've dreamed my dream. Sometimes it rains there, and then it's just plain damp and cold. Sometimes I'd roam its little paths when I felt old. Now smell the air, and you'll smell exhaust fumes everywhere, because the Fenway's just too narrow not to be bothered by them there. But there's a silence to the place as you stand there in the sun, and there's an ancient haunting sorrow, 'cause its glory days have gone. And there is silence in the Gardner Museum on the Fenway where I've dreamed my dream. And there's a silence to the place as you stand there in the sun, and an echo from an era that's already past and gone. And there is silence in the Gardner Museum that's on the Fenway where I've dreamed my dream. Boston's Fenway where I dreamed my dream.
Lovely. Thank you. So, I've got all sorts of questions for you.
Andrew, all right.
You've been doing this for a long time.
Yes.
Since the early 70s.
Since the late 60s.
Since the late 60s. And I'm curious there wasn't a name for what you were doing when it started, right? I mean, there wasn't
Except Copy in the Velvet Underground.
Okay.
that would have been the name I would have called it.
Yeah. But then it became known as, early proto-punk.
Not to us. Back in the States at that time, us and the Ramones too, and all those bands, we all just thought we were rock bands.
Right.
No one had heard of that stuff. There were a few words in the paper. Some you'd hear like there were these rock magazines, and guys would throw around these words, but there was no what you call punk, and if there was, no one was flattered by the term.
Right.
You know, it was.
That's what I was wondering.
No, a punk was a guy in a street gang who took a cheap shot.
Right.
You know, a punk was not Muhammad Ali. A punk was some little coward in the back of a gang who kicked you when you were down.
Since then, there's a whole scholarly.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. They're scholarly too much and not playing music enough.
Right. But they're talking about like punk was dismantling the Western civilization and all the institutions and all this stuff.
Great. All they had to do was learn how to tune that silly guitar, and they'd have been in business.
But then, how do you? Okay, so you're not even thinking about that.
No,
because I think,
and I didn't at the time either.
Yeah.
At the time, it was just a strange category that I noticed when first time over in Europe. I just noticed these categories that we didn't have in the States, and I really cared sort of more selfishly than that. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to express myself in front of the audience, mm-hmm. and like that, and I wanted to have a, rock music happen.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, but I guess it's the idea of like, if you've got a good idea, just book yourself a show, get some posters, and just make that idea happen, whether you have the, formal training or not, or just like, if you've got something to express, just figure out a way to do it.
There, I think you said it the second
support,
time.
Yeah.
I think when you said something to express,
yeah.
Even more important than the idea, I think something, an emotion, mm-hmm. a feeling to express.
Right.
Which is what that was my reason for doing it. I needed the audience. I cried on their shoulder. Yeah. That was my point. I mean,
yeah.
I didn't even think of myself in any. I thought of myself as, wow, I get a chance. Here are these places I get to play, and then I put a group together, so there would be 4 of us doing it. Mm-hmm. But the idea was, I wanted to I was lonely and sad about stuff, and I wanted to sort of tell the world how I felt. Mm-hmm. And I also felt beauty in things, and the Velvet Underground inspired me that way. So did other people, like the Love and Spoonful. All this beauty I heard in this music, I wanted to try and create a feeling like that in a room. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, so there was... And other than that, I was really just copying people like the Stooges, the Kinks, the Velvet Underground, mm-hmm. People, all kinds of people. Yeah.
But you're a classic romantic. I mean...
I thought so at the time. I don't know how I feel now. I had a clearer sense of what that word was then than I do now.
It seems like you're just as excited about art as ever.
Yes, that is true.
Yeah.
That, if anything, possibly even more so in some way. Yes, but at least, yes, that's true.
And the first thing we talked about on the phone when we were talking about doing this was a mutual, I don't know if you heard it in my music or where you got the Ravel tip.
That was funny. I just, as a brainstorm, before I did hear it, I did not hear Ravel in the first CDs you sent us. Mm-hmm. I didn't hear Ravel's influence. Mm-hmm. I just had a hunch, okay, Jonathan, what are you going to do on Andrew's show? Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. And I just figured, because I'd already talked to you about improvising some stuff and maybe backing you up on a song that you intentionally didn't tell me, and me having you back me up on something which I didn't tell you. But I said, it might be nice to give the audience something that you folks both know,
right.
And so I said, I was working on this Ravel piece, and I just figured maybe Andrew likes some. Just I didn't know, so it was a guess. And when you said that he was a big deal to you, I was saying, "Oh, right." I had no idea.
Yeah, he's been huge, and I've quoted him in my music a lot.
And then when you sent us other stuff that I hadn't heard before, the like Useless Creatures collection, like then I go, okay, we heard that. Mm-hmm.
But you suggested this piece, which I didn't know that well.
Yeah.
Of Ravel's, this Pavane pour l'enfant
défunt. Yeah.
pavane for a dead child.
Yeah, but I don't think it literally means that. I don't think it's as back then, guys like Eric Satie had already started to set the standard for playing with words and sarcasm and being all sardonic and stuff.
Yeah.
And ironic and everything.
Yeah.
So I don't think it literally means elegy
Right.
to a dead child. I think it means, in fact, I remember reading somewhere that it was a play on words of some other title. You know, I'm not sure, but anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it literally is that. You know.
Yeah. Well, it's a
Anyhow.
beautiful piece, and it's like
Sure,
I
it's
spent the
pretty.
last 2 weeks immersing myself in it and
Yeah.
and learning it just by ear, and we've been playing it the last hour or so.
Yeah.
But we're
Hope
gonna
it
play.
turns out good.
You know, it's gonna be like we said. It's gonna be approximate.
Yeah.
It's not. We're not practitioners, but. right. We made it. Yeah, that was cool. It's such a, I mean, the pieces of Ravel that I've loved are like the second movement of the string quartet, which is one of the most rocking. A lot of his pieces, they don't kind of, they have this momentum to them that a lot of classical music doesn't have. There's a polyrhythm going on.
Those guys were so wild. I'm really excited to be on this show, partly because I love your music. Anyway, it's mutual, incidentally. You said you're a fan of mine. I am also really an admirer of what you do, and I want also, once I heard that you were a fan of Ravel, that made me really excited about this, because I love to talk about that whole era of music. You talked about how their music, like Ravel's music, was different from other classical music of the time, how it pulsated differently. Mm-hmm. These guys, Eric Satie, him, yeah. Debussy. Also, from Spain, there was a guy, part of this group called Manuel de Falla. Mm-hmm. Have you heard of him yet?
Yeah.
Okay. These people, this sort of route from Barcelona through Perpignan train station up there over to Paris, this whole network of artists that were happening at that time, mm-hmm. There was something, they were so dead serious, it was so life and death for them, that I think their work did stuff that others didn't. I mean, they listened to everything. Mm-hmm. Debussy listened to Chinese music, listened to Polynesian music.
Well, yeah, they were apparently all there, Ravel and Debussy, at the Paris World Fair, 1889, and heard this gamelan music.
Yes.
And all that pentatonic stuff, and
yes.
It makes total sense.
And
it's kind of early for the jazz stuff that you hear in it, but when you hear that played on piano, it sounds like Bill Evans, like
yes.
what's that chord?
Yeah, those are 7/9 chords, which also appear in James Brown. You know.
Yeah.
Like right, it's way early jazz that way, mm-hmm. And occasionally you hear these voicings too. You know, which I heard were also unusual for that time.
Yeah.
In fact, Manuel de Falla, in his tribute to Debussy, when Debussy died, they asked Manuel de Falla, the composer from Spain, for a tribute, and he wrote him a piece. And in it, he put this chord in, and I asked the guitar teacher who was helping me decipher what was going on mm-hmm. in such a piece. And I said, what's a chord like that doing? Isn't that unusual for classical? He says, yeah, but these guys were a different breed at that time. Mm-hmm. And Debussy, by the time he died in 1918, was already starting to get into the voicings of the United States. Mm-hmm. And Manuel de Falla might have put that in as a musical in-joke tribute to that.
Right.
So, yes, these guys were wild, and I mean that in the sense of it was life and death for them.
Yeah.
They really wanted to make music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's that string quartet pieces. There's also, in Weather Systems, there's this...
Very reminiscent
sounds
of
just
Debussy.
like Pavane,
very much so. Yes, those kind of
and all
voicings.
These kinds of and it sounds they're described as impressionistic, and it makes some sense because there's a sort of a smearing of the chords and like a sort of washed out. It's less triads and more like fourths, and and it creates this kind of dreamy thing. And the time is a little elastic, and it kind of flows, ebbs and flows. So, but then you really listen to a piece like Pavane and learn it, and you realize how meticulous it was and how slowly Ravel composed over his lifetime. It was like very, very meticulous.
Yeah, I'd heard that from others. That in fact, what some other classical players loved about Ravel was that each piece was designed very, very, like every note was there for the support of the piece and for nothing else.
Yeah. But it's really cool to meet you here at Ravel, like coming from different, like you said earlier, I've always been coming from a conservatory and a trained world that I never quite fully embraced. But nonetheless, I came out of school playing complicated, fancy music.
Yes.
And then I suddenly was in the clubs meeting people who could hardly tune their guitars, but had...
Of which I was a member of that club.
Right, and I found
years.
Over the last 20 years, I meet a lot of people going the other direction. They've started off self-taught and raw, and then they get turned on by different things they didn't know about, and then they throw themselves into it.
Exactly,
they are
my
romantic.
Case. Exactly my case. In fact, it was simply that, untrained for many years, and I was first just looking for tone colors to play against my usual. I was just hearing, I was introduced to take a score like Hello Dolly, you know, there would be majors and minors against each other's in a certain way, and then diminished. And I was thinking, wow, a diminished chord every once in a while really sets up the usual C, A minor, F, and G stuff that I've been doing. It makes all these colors.
Yeah.
So what I got into, before we came here today, I was trying to think of how I got into Ravel and Debussy exactly. And I think I got into Debussy because Oscar Levant made an album about, back in the 50s, that we found at a yard sale. We being me and my certain someone, like we were just passing through a yard sale, and for $1, Oscar Levant plays his classical favorites on grand piano, and one of them was Girl Maiden with the Flaxen Hair by Debussy, and I flipped. It was so evocative, and I had to hear more, and so I started buying more things. And then, since my ear isn't good enough to understand all the complicated things that a guy like Debussy or Ravel is doing, that's why I've been teaching myself to read music these last 10 years. Exactly because I'm turned on by it. To me, it's beautiful, and I can't do it. So, since my ear isn't good enough to just go, oh, he's playing the C natural against the C sharp there, and he's got a B pedal on the bottom. Right. My ear can't hear that quick, so I have to see. But if I see it on paper, and can go real slow and go, oh, I see. Right. And then I have to say, am I really playing that right? And show it to a classical teacher, say, look, should my finger really be there?
Yeah.
Then I can understand, yes, they did mean that, and here's why. But it takes me a long time, and that's how I got into it. And then Ravel, I forget exactly. Oh, yeah, it was because I started buying classical. Once I started getting into teaching myself stuff and getting into classical stuff, I wanted to hear it played on guitar, so I would buy Christopher Parkening this.
Right.
Sure enough, he's also playing Ravel, and he played that Pavan that we just played. He did a version of it. And then I heard another fabulous version by another guitar player, Julian Bream, with such feeling, such soul. And I went, this stuff really has a lot that I want to learn. And yes, that's exactly how I got into it. Later in life, I went, where has this stuff been? I wasn't sorry that I didn't learn it earlier. I wasn't ready for it. Right. But then I heard how it applied to my own music, which is still simple. But occasionally, borrowing tone colors from people like that, I can express myself better.
Yeah. Yeah. It's cool that you learn what you need to do to get the job done that you're hearing, you know.
That's my approach, because I'm not trying to convert into, a classical musician.
Sure.
But what I am trying to do is, wow, this whole world of music had such, and it's so very varied too. Some classical music I just plain can't stand because it just sounds like some royalty said, here's stooge, for 50,000 pounds, compose this for my coming, parade, and a lot of it just sounds like that. Yeah. Okay, he's going to want all kinds of gingerbread here, he's going to want fancy stuff. But this Debussy was dead serious. Yeah. It doesn't sound like he's pandering to anybody. Yeah. And so him and Ravel neither. It just sounds, Manuel de Falla too, these kind of chords. All these mystery chords.
Yeah.
And
or I sometimes like to play just a series of fourths, like.
Yes. Yeah.
Just throw that in there. I don't know exactly what I'm doing, but I like it. I've never, even though I went to music school, I don't know the name. I don't say, oh, that's a ninth here or whatever. I can figure that stuff out, but
Yes.
it's not really that interesting to me how it works, as long as it does.
Have you gotten into the chords that the flamenco players use, like things like this? You know, those types of things.
Yeah, I just think of it in terms of like open and or more closed.
Open in the sense of McCoy Tyner playing with John Coltrane, those open and...
Some of that, gets into like the modal.
Taking
Coltrane
out the major, taking out the third, taking out the third.
I was going to say McCoy Tyner went in relation to the Ravel and Debussy
Okay,
stuff,
good, because then I understand you. Yes,
Yeah.
open in that sense.
But I started playing a loop like this, and that's still a little bit closed. And then I start playing. You know.
Which is how I got into music of India, which is very open that way. For sometime when the major and the minor whole chord, major scale and minor scale. No, what I want to say is not that at all. The music of India is a whole other realm.
And that brings us to this next tune we're going to do.
Haretha Ni Nahin by Kabir. The path, where was my root note? I think it was down here.
It's G.
Jab mein tahari nahin, ab hari hai nain nahin, prem gali ati sankare, yam lo samaye nahin. Jab mein tahari nahin, ab hari hai nain nahin, prem gali ati sankare, yam do samaye nahin. When my ego was there, the divine in me could not be there. Then the divine showed up, and my ego had to be kicked out. Because this lover's lane is very narrow. The two can't both be there at the same time. Jamenta hare nahin, ab hari hai nain nahin, prem gali ati sankare, yame lo samaye rai. Kabir from the 1400s.
Beautiful. And I was, another thing I wanted to ask you about is the presence of humor in your music. That's
because I'm very funny.
Well,
I'm so amusing. I amuse myself. I told you about my party of the second part. We lived together for the last 19 years, my special someone. She doesn't think I'm quite as funny as I think I am. But I must tell you, yes, my music has much humor in it, and that is simply because I'm so hilarious. My part of the second part sometimes beg to differ. Sometimes I think I'm funny and she doesn't.
Right.
But that's batting 500.
yeah,
And Ted Williams only hit 400 and he only did that once.
good point.
So 500 is pretty
Yeah.
good. In a house of two, I get one. So yes, I'm very amusing.
Well, my question is,
Yes.
I've been thinking about this a lot since my last record, and I've had comedians on the show,
Yeah.
and that I've always been fascinated by that irreverence that comedians have,
Yeah.
and then the sincerity that you assume musicians have,
Yeah.
and that the question is,
Yes.
I don't believe that sincerity and humor in music are mutually exclusive.
Did anyone ever?
It seems sometimes like it is.
Who are these fools? Who are these buffoons? this is really terrible. I'm sorry to hear this, Andrew. I didn't know that there were such people, but when I find them, I'm going to root them out. This is terrible. They should be kicked out of all musichood, those who feel in such a way. What could they be thinking?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think
I don't
that's.
know, Jonathan.
I'm sorry. I pity them. This is a terrible state of
Well,
affairs.
I think people, there's a certain swath of people that think, songwriters are just bleeding for you. It's all that, this.
That's the key. Don't be a songwriter. Just make up songs. You've hit it. That's right. It's those songwriters. It's all their fault.
Right.
So I say, songwriters, don't write them. Don't be a. Just make them up.
Just make stuff up.
Yeah, make stuff up.
Yeah.
Have a fabulous time over there.
Well, the first song of yours that, when I moved to New York not too long ago, I went out and bought the first Modern Lovers record.
Yes.
And that song, Hospital, was that the first Modern Lovers record?
That was actually a collection of demo tapes that my band made that got collated into a thing and released a few years later and became what is known as the first album of that band.
Yeah. And that song, I could both appreciate that you're going through something and also laugh at the line, I go to bakeries sometimes.
All day long. And when I was 18 years old, I used to go to bakeries all day long because there was a lack of sweetness in my life. And to me, that was less a cheap pun than it was actual description of what was happening because I was a sad little 18-year-old, see.
Yeah.
And so when I sang that line, I didn't laugh.
Right.
At that, I laughed at other hilarious things I did.
Yeah.
That one I didn't think was that funny.
Okay.
That one I thought was just very pathetic and accurate description of what I was, because I literally, I would walk around moping in New York City because this girl didn't want to talk to me anymore because I was obnoxious. See,
Yeah.
that was implied,
Okay.
and that was hidden deep in the song.
Okay.
But but there were these eclairs and chocolate treats and things with big strawberry on top. So I bought that. And I must tell your listening audience that it does not work as a substitute for an actual girlfriend. It has a cherry on top, but that does not make it hot. It has the strawberry, but that doesn't mean it's that pretty. It has the different chocolate eclair, but there's no feminine true energy there.
Exactly.
If you catch my drift.
Exactly.
So it has the elements of sweetness, but not the human, as the Italians would say, calor umano.
Got it. So you really did go to bakeries.
I didn't just do cheap puns because they were cheap. I did them because they reflected my actual pathetic state at the time.
Okay.
That was pathetic. And it was true. So, so that was an example of something that I didn't think was that funny, but I could understand if some did because it has elements.
Sure.
But actually, that song was wicked pathetic. But true.
It's also very vague. You don't know why she's in the hospital.
That you're not supposed to.
I mean, if you were a novelist, you'd explain that.
And I'm not. So,
which is one of the beautiful things about a song is there's not enough time to go into the full backstory.
Do you know that I never even thought of myself as not only a novelist, I never thought of myself as a songwriter. I'm a singer who makes up songs so he'll have something to sing.
Got it.
And
I've said that myself before, too.
Yeah, and that's why. And so I was just making up stuff. All these songs from then or now were always different with each version. One reason I've started to include 2 or 3 versions of the same song on albums lately is because a lot of times I hear it 2 or 3 different ways, 2 or 3 different lyric versions, and to me none of them is right.
Right.
Yeah. And a lot of times I don't want to decide. I want, because I hear a few different takes on it.
Right. Yeah. I like the idea of versions. I was thinking about that too, about like Jamaican music. It's all about versions.
Yeah.
It's and sometimes, like you were saying, when I tried to request this song timidly the other night, in the hospital song.
Yeah.
You were saying, I'm going to sound different in 1 hour, or I sound different like a day ago. Why? I just don't know.
In fact, the good thing was you didn't mention the title of the song last night, which was good. Because now you only gave me, and I asked you, I said, oh, come on, okay, I'm curious. So now I have just an hour to get bratty about it. Rather, I would have had 24 full hours of brattiness to just get all contrary
Well,
and go, no. So now
You
with just
handled it
an
very
hour-
elegantly. You said, well, if I were playing for a 5-year-old's birthday party, I might do it.
Well, yeah, but that was not to imply that. Well, that was not to suggest or to try and transmit the emotion of. Well, frankly, I wanted to say that if the younger generation requests things, it often brings out a certain side in me, and I'll play them a verse of something that I wouldn't have played for the more of age members of the audience.
Well, let's just
Here, it goes
touch
like
on
this.
it instrumentally, and then we can segue into this pianoforte thing, maybe.
Nice. Wow, this is interesting to do this because without the voice, it loses so much. Like, I play guitar as an accompanying instrument, and I realize that I need, like, without the voice, like the guitar sets up the drama, but in my case, the voice is the thing.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. Then begs the question, well, Jonathan, then why don't you just sing the damn thing? And that's because I made it up when I was 19 and felt it with real soul. And now, I'm already approaching 40 years old now. So a lot of time has gone by between now and then, and I can't sing it with quite the soul. So I'd rather let the song live in 1970 than die in 2017.
Fair enough, yeah.
Because as it is written, there is nothing more pathetic than a 66-year-old man, like doing versions of songs that he did when he was 19, unless he can truly act like a 19-year-old.
Yeah.
I can't.
Well, fair enough. I mean, how about this this pianoforte?
Oh,
piece?
From the poet of Naples, Salvatore di Giacomo. I got into Napolitan dialect because I do translations of Italian into English every once in a while. And one of them was really difficult to me, so I put myself back in Italian class in San Francisco, where we were at the time. And in one of the classes, they had you read a book and give a dissertation on, the professor gave you different things you could give a dissertation on, different aspects of the book, the history of Naples, around World War II. It was by an author named Eri De Luca, in a book called, I've forgotten the title. Let's see. L'ultimo giorno della felicità, the last day of happiness. Or, in any case, I picked my discourse to be on Neapolitan grammar because it had a lot of Neapolitan words in the book.
Right.
And then in doing that, I noticed that they quoted this Neapolitan poet named Salvatore di Giacomo, who's very important in Naples. And so I bought a book of his stuff. And pianoforte e notte, piano of nighttime. It's about a guy on his balcony in a poor neighborhood in an alley listening to piano music coming from a distance. Pianoforte e notte, sola lontanamente, la musica si sente, per l'aria sospira, e luna dorme ovico, copa sta nonna, na motivo antico, e tanto tempo fa. quante stelle in cielo, che luna, che aria dolce, quanto una bella voce vorrei sentire cantare. Ma solitario e lento muove un motivo antico, se fa più cupo o vico tenta l'oscurità. L'anima mia soltanto rimane a sta finestra, aspetta ancora e rimane incantandosi a pensare, a pensare. In the end of the song, the guy's sitting in his room. I'd rather just remain here with my thoughts. You know, first he wanted another singer. He wished he could hear a singer in the night, but now he's content just to hear this piano off in the distance as it's making the whole vicolo, the whole alley, feel even darker. Most of the people are sleeping. He's can't go to sleep. He's listening to this music, and he's just there content to just be with his thoughts in the dark, listening. And that's why Salvatore da Giacomo has become one of my favorite poets. I've other songs, I've made melodies to other of his songs, his poems, and I just, I've become a big fan of the poet Salvatore da Giacomo.
Good exercise for any songwriter or person that makes songs up is to take poetry and if you hit a wall with your writing or something, just take someone's poetry that you really respect and get back to the syntax. I got to make a side comment.
Yeah. I got to tell the audience a wonderful thing. I have never hit a wall, and that's because I don't consider myself a songwriter. Now, if a songwriter doesn't, this is really true, if a songwriter doesn't write songs for 6 months, what do you call that? He's hit a wall. Mm-hmm. But if a guy who just sings and makes up stuff doesn't write songs for 6 months, it's okay because he's not one. Okay, that was my side comment.
Do you ever just write without the intention of writing a song?
I sing all the time around the house. I would say I write songs down.
Yeah.
What I do is I have a notebook full of ideas that a lot of times ideas will come to me all the time, at all hours, and I'll write them down if I think I'm going to forget them. Oh, a side reason why I taught myself to read music is because when I wake up at 3 a.m. with an idea, that way I get out sometimes, scroll out the staff, because you must have had that experience of melodies that at 3 a.m. you remember and you say, I'll remember it in the morning.
Yeah.
But it was so simple. How am I going to forget? It's just the root to the 4 and back. But no,
it's left your bones.
Yep, and it was some turn on it. Maybe it was the timing of it. Maybe you did a quick rest before going to the 4 chord or something like that. Something that you can't remember. So nowadays I know enough musical grammar so that I can at least write out enough so that I can give a rough guess.
Sure.
So anyway,
I used to be like. To say, if it's really worth remembering, then
exactly. So I didn't do it, and I paid the price.
Yeah,
that's why. Because they were exactly.
I've abandoned that to some degree, but I don't write stuff down. But
I didn't for years and stuff. But there were some things that said, boy, I wish I remembered how it went, even if I could just know, hey, that was no good. Yeah. But sometimes when I wake up at 3 a.m., I'll go write it down at least so I can. If it wasn't remembering in the morning, I want to be sure that is it and not just be sour grapes. Well, that wasn't so great anyway if I didn't remember.
Right. But I've been fascinated lately by or for a while now, about, you were very influenced by Lou Reed.
Yes.
And Patti Smith, the rock and roll street poet, but the delivery of Lou Reed and yourself and Patti and some others of being half spoken, half sung, causes a listener, I think, to absorb the words in a different way.
I'm not aware of my own delivery now.
Yeah.
I realized that when I started, if it weren't for Lou Reed and Iggy, I wouldn't have had a delivery at all. If I wasn't stealing from one, I was stealing from the other.
Right.
And
but when you slip out of the melodic singing, which can sometimes cause words to slip through.
do I still do that?
No, you're more singing full on, but that kind of half spoken, half sung thing is like, I think it really.
Leonard Cohen.
Yeah.
So,
it
like
engages.
many fabulous.
Oh yeah.
The fabulous Woody Guthrie.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, this
Or
has
just
been going
those-
on for
those-
some time.
Or just those country and pop songs from the 50s where they would have the recitation in the middle
Hank
of the song.
Williams.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Elvis Presley.
Where it's just friends.
That's
you
yeah.
know.
Oh yeah. Oh, this has been going on for quite some
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
I don't mean to put myself, folks, in the company of the people I've just named.
No,
but
you
in any
should.
case,
That's where I put you.
oh, thank you.
But isn't it kind of like, oh, they're telling a story now? And now I can kind of, as a listener, you're just like, oh, I'm listening now to a story.
You know
And it's a
what my
different-
goal is? To be so much into the story that I don't know how I'm telling it. Like just how we're talking.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of it.
Right.
That's how I want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's why I asked you, do I still do that? I sort of don't want to know, really.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't want to, I just want to, Pianoforte notte, suona lontanamente, la musica si sente, per l'aria sospira. I want to be like that,
Yeah, you should be like that. That's beautiful. No, I'm just saying when you slip into that half-sung, half-spoken thing that puts like some little bit of barbed wire on the words, so
How
it kind
about
of gets
this?
stuck.
The old world's fading fast.
Huh? Yeah.
When the fire can't last, I say goodbye to a fading older world. And I don't want to go back to the old world. I don't want to go back to the fading older world. Older world. Can't go back. Give me a drone. In fact, don't make it the root note. Make it another one. Give me something odd. There. We can't go back to fainting couch and corsetry. We can't go back to Pompadour and Cumberbund. We can't go back to fainting couch and corsetry. Am I doing that half talk, half singing now? Okay, then I get it. Now just give me a flat drone. Just pick a note and stick with it. Yeah. Stick with it. Well, I don't want to go back to 1950. I don't want to go back to 1980. When I say goodbye, stick with, the fading all the world. Yeah. So
Yeah. Exactly.
give me one more drone. Pick a different one. Give me one more, a different dissonant than you picked that last time. Just try one. Well, I don't want to go back to 1980. Stick with that. Perfect. I don't want to go back to the fading older world. And I don't want to go back to 1980 no more. I say all world. Yes. In fact, it was you mentioned Lou Reed, in the last 20 years or so, John Cale has actually been a bigger influence. Yeah. That thing you were just doing, the John Cale aspect of the Velvet Underground. All four of them, the whole gang influenced me. But especially lately, I had the chance to play at a tribute to John Cale in New York the other month, and I was so moved by it. I'd have gone anywhere he asked, if I would play for John Cale, anywhere, anything. Yeah. And I was so moved, yes, Cale. Yeah. Cale, who I think has added so much to modern, that thing that a lot of the bands and a lot of the musicians want to get to, Kale. And this stuff we were doing, you know, that aspect of that Ravel and Debussy and that and the dissonance and the things. John Cale, certainly. Has anyone explored that more than him in modern pop and rock music?
Yeah. I mean, the elements of what's happening in a Velvet Underground are so... you can lay them all out and replicate them and it won't work.
Right.
It just won't work. It's so... I
Yeah.
mean,
It was the chemistry of the... And partly because of the subtle things they're all doing. Yeah, stuff you can't write out.
yeah. So I want to ask you, as your way of doing things,
Yes.
which is not a prescribed in any way of doing things in the music world, like you will just show up and play. You seem to be off the circuit or on your own circuit. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Playing a VFW hall here or a house concert here, and
A lot of bars, too. A lot of
Yeah.
plain old places.
yeah.
A lot of places.
And is that by design? You like to keep it on a human scale?
I like small places. You can make a pop, like, for example, we just played at FYF the other week. What I tell them, if I'm playing a festival like that, a lot of times I'll say, will you give us, let's say they have 2 or 3 stages, I say, will you give us the more intimate one? So I still work sometimes on a larger scale of a few thousand, but within that parameter, a lot of times I'll like to take the more intimate one. Some festivals are just too big.
Yeah.
Don't want them. There's a little festival up north called Pickathon, and they keep the customers to about 2,500.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
In fact, you can walk from tent to tent in a few minutes, so everything's really that scale.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the ancient size of human scale
Yeah.
in music. So I like, 500 is good.
That's inspiring to me. Sometimes my ambition gets the better of me. I want bigger, more. Like. And
Well, you know what?
you
If
find
you want
yourself
to
being
cure
run-
it,
You find your world being run out of control. You know what I mean?
What's the biggest
did
audience
that
you've ever
happen to
played
you, and then
for?
you kind of backed off?
what's the biggest audience you've played for?
I don't know, 25,000 or something.
Okay, I was cured. We played a pop festival in Holland in 1979 called Pink Pop, and there were 42,000. And it was just too big to be exciting. It was just not the kind of, there could have been there could have been a machine shop on one part of the fairgrounds and you wouldn't have known it. There could have been a textile industry on another part. There was actually a street fight, an actual literal large gang fight happening in the middle of the show that I had the misfortune to see. And no one even knew it because it was vast enough a crowd so that you could have 3 cities, you could have a black market operation, you could have tax fraud going, you could have bombers, going on overhead. You wouldn't notice just because it's too big.
Yeah.
And I noticed another factor. When it's that big, the audience is too nice to you. Here's what I noticed. They liked us too much. And I wondered why. And
It was
I realized,
too easy to get a response out of them?
yes, too easy. Like, other people were nervous. I don't get nervous in situations like that.
Yeah.
Like for me, it was easy. And
You just hit them and they hit you back. and
I
it's
didn't
kind of
even
a
I
brute
just
force.
tap them. Like, I was just singing. But what I didn't like was this. Part of the reason it's too easy is because when I noticed is there's a tremor of fear in an audience, an unspoken tremor underneath all the delight of it and everyone's smoking dope and having a terrific time. When you're among 40 or 50,000 people in close proximity, guys without their shirt on, people taking too many, God knows what kind of drugs, people with gang affiliations, you don't know it, but your body knows it. You're afraid. And you want it to go well. So you actually, check it out. If you're ever in something like that again, be real quiet in it and see if you don't fear underneath all the fun and pretzels for sale and people selling this and that. There's also And it's not across the board. This isn't true at all times, and it won't be. But when a big act is playing on the main stage and there's a gigantic thing, check out how little communication is going on.
Right.
Even if they get a big response, like they're being projected a lot of times nowadays on a big giant screen, just look at the audience and see what you see. I saw enough that I didn't like, so then I never wanted to do it again. Then I played 20,000 a few years later and didn't like that either.
Right.
10,000 is a good maximum for me. I can make that work.
Right.
5 more comfortable, 1,000. And what we're doing right now for the radio, and if anyone not watching, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there's about 12 people in the whole place. Can't beat this for me. I'm as happy as if there were any other number. Maybe happier.
Yeah.
To me, it isn't the number, it's who shows up.
Right.
I'd rather have 12 people who are the right chemistry than 40,000 and have only those 12 plus 39,983 who aren't in there with you.
Right. I'm with you. Would you do me the honor of playing one of my tunes here? This.
I'd be delighted, and don't tell me much than you've already told me. Don't remind me what key it's in.
Okay.
Yeah. Is this okay?
You were a shameless child, then a scene bandied by stiff cross currents. Hold on, sorry. It's got a certain note. You were a shameless child, bandied by stiff cross currents. You were anything but mild. Yes or no, just simply weren't invented yet. Oh yes, oh no. Then one day you'd had it. You exiled your close advisors. You ousted your dog, eat rabbits. You're through with pacifiers. You're through with pacifiers now. You're through with pacifiers. Here we go, mistaking clouds for mountains. Here's a thing that brings the sparrows to the fountains. Here's a thing that makes you run for the highlands. Here we go, mistaking clouds for mountains. Autonomy. You're through with pacifiers now. clouds from mountains. Oh, he's the thing that brings the sparrows to the fountains. Oh, he's the thing that makes you run for the highlands. Here we go, mistaking clouds for mountains, autonomy. Thank you. Thanks, Jonathan. This has really
Thank you.
been awesome.
That's been great. Thank you.
Do you want to go out with anything?
Yeah. Well, I found a love. I found a love. I found a love. Gapanipada that opens worlds for me. I found a love that opens doors, and now we've gone electrical, and now we've gone still. Let's see. I found love. It's her. I found love. Oh, it's her. And now she and I have gone electrical, and now we've gone still.
Nice. Thank you, Jonathan Richman. Thanks, everybody. Join us next week for Live in the Great Room with the Handsome Family. And also next week I'll be with Esperanza Spalding making a record that you can also watch.